modelers, it's Chris, and today I'm going to show you how to set up DCC-EX installer and write your first automation. I'll show you how easy it is to write an automation using EX installer. We'll also have a quick look at the DCC-EX website and have a quick look at the page that describes the various functions that are available to you when you're writing your automations. Then we're going to upload it to the CSP1. Okay, so to program the CSP1 and to write automations, you've got two choices. You can use the Arduino IDE, which is a more complex editing solution. All the tabs at the top here are various pieces of code which are required to run the command station. But in actual fact, you're only going to be using a small subset of those. So by clicking on this button, you can see all the different tabs. And for most people, looking at that, it's going to be very confusing. And at the moment, the first thing we're going to be looking at, we only need the automation file and the config file. So there's just those two. So let's move on and look at installing the DCC-EX installer. This is the page with all the instructions that you need to follow. The first thing you do is download the installer. Now you want to set up a folder with the installer in and the other files and folders that will be needed later on. I'll explain more about that when we get into it, but it's highly recommended that you use the EX installer for simplicity's sake. The download section describes the download process for Windows, Apple OS and Linux. Now I'm using the Mac OS, and so for me it's the terminal window where I will do the downloads and open it each time I go to run it. Now I've got my folder on the desktop, so I'll CDN to the desktop. Now if you don't know what that means, in terminal what we've done is we're just opening the desktop up. Then I'll go to the folder itself, and once I'm in the folder I'll put a link to the application. Now it'll take a few seconds for EX installer to open. So while we're waiting for EX installer to open, let's have a quick look at two pages on the DCC-EX website that are going to help you a lot with writing the little scripts that you'll be making up for your automations, etc. The first page is the Xrail command reference. This will give you a list of all the commands and what they're used for. Have a read through the various sections like conventions used on this page. They might not mean a lot at the moment. As we go through making our first couple of automations, it'll start to make some sense. Things like done, end if, follow, etc. An if statement is if something is true or false, you do something and then you end it with an end if. The done usually happens at the end of a sequence or automation or route, or you can use the follow ID to go to another sequence or repeat the same sequence. As you go through this page, you'll see there's a whole heap of arrows. You click on them and they open up and show you an example of what's in that section. So this is very handy in the learning stage. Again, a lot of these things won't make a lot of sense until we start putting them into practice. So that's a quick look. The page goes on quite a bit more, and there's a heap of different commands, so have a good look through that area. This page is the DCC-EX Xrail page. Xrail is the extended railroad automation instruction language, and again it talks about the objects and sequences and routes and automation, etc. So it's another page well worth looking at. As you see over here in the menu, you can see subjects like your editing, my automation, objects, sequences, examples, and cookbooks, all things that are designed to help you build your automation. And now we have it. You're at the welcome page. From here I'll take you through the steps to start up your first automation. Okay, one last thing before we start to work with EX installer. This is my folder system, and in it I've got a text file with the code that I'm going to be working on. As you know, I've had a stroke, and at the moment I'm one finger typing, so I won't put you through the pain of typing up the automations. This folder is empty at the moment, but that's where the code is going to go for this automation. This is my test folder. Now, I strongly suggest that you come up with a numbering system like this. I've written a whole bunch of different automations, 10 in fact, and as I go through doing these videos, I'll work way through these. It's a good practice to get it to a point where you've got something working that you're happy with, copy the folder and index it on one, and then that way as you're going through you've got on your computer a backup of what you've done just before, so you can roll back if you get it badly wrong. And once the number 3 video is done, it will get stored in this folder. And finally, I've got a global notes file with some reference material in, and of course the EX installer that's referenced through the terminal when you start it up. So let's get going. We'll click on the Manage Arduino CLI, and it'll bring you to a page where you don't really need to change anything. Next, we want to select your device. Now here you'll have a whole bunch of ports, and the one that's connected to your device, of course we're writing code for the CSP one, so I'll select that. Now we're going to move forward again, and we'll click on Command Station because that's the first thing we're going to do. Here you'll get the latest version, and I'd suggest that you stay with that. You don't make any changes. And the first time we do it, we're not going to select a folder. Next time we come into this, we will do. So we'll go forward again. Now, here you'll choose the items that you want set up by EX installer. Now, if you've got a CSP1, the chances are it's going to have a display. I choose Configure Track Manager, start up with power on, make a automation file and advanced config. Next, you choose the display. And lastly, you'll choose either CSP1, or if it's CSP1 with expansion board, you'll choose that one. So we're going just CSP1. Okay, now it's going to the advanced config. Now in the config file, it's all basically set up for you, but your password and SSID is not set up. So I've already got that set up in a document. So now I've got the host name and password and SSID done. I've added one more thing, the IP address. At this stage, we'll go ahead and compile this just to make sure it's working, but more importantly, to save what's been done so far in the folder. So we load it. This will take about a minute. Now it's loaded the code, but what I always do when I get to this stage is I back up the files. And this is where you'll choose the folder that you want them to be saved to. And there you go, backup's complete. Now if we go over to the folder, you'll see got a myautomation.h file and a config.h file. So all is good. Let's close this out. We'll go on continuing with the code. Now I always like to come back to the beginning, choose the folder, click on the config file and open it, and then go to the advanced config page. So these are the options we set in the advanced settings. Auto start, power on, set track A for the main and set track B for the programming track, and then done at the end of that. Next we want to start putting our first automation into that place. So I've just copy and pasted the first part of the automation. This is a unique number for the automation. The same goes for sequences and routes. They can only have the one number and it can't be repeated in any of them. That's what will appear on your throttle, be it a phone, an iPad or a Wi-Fi throttle. If we were to write another automation, then it would have to be number 2 or 3 or 4 or any other number you like. What I'm doing here is I'm starting up the loco sound, and that's function 8. I'm turning the headlight on, which is function 0, and then I'm getting it to wait for 5 seconds so everything catches up, and then I'm calling number 2, which is a sequence. So it runs through this piece of code once, and then the sequence is the next part of the code. So sequence 2 starts off with a 5-second delay. It then turns on the loco's horn for 1 second. It turns it off, and then we apply a speed step of 25 and we run the loco for 10 seconds in the forward direction. At the end of 10 seconds we stop it and we have a 5-second delay, and then we turn the bell on. We reverse at speed step 25. It continues for 10 seconds and then it stops, and then it turns the bell off. We delay again and we repeat the process. So let's compile and load this piece of code. I'm sorry for the quality of this part of the video. I'm going to see if I can get an emulator so that I can run it on the computer. That way the vision will be of better quality. Now I'm running Engine Driver on an Android, a fairly basic low-cost one. So at startup you want to choose a loco. This one is one that was already programmed in. Now I want to choose routes, and there we go. That's the first one. What I'll do now is I'll start it running. So that's it. It's running now backwards and forwards. When it goes forwards, it turns the headlight on and sounds the horn. And when it goes backwards, it puts the rear light on and rings the bell until it gets to the end and stops. And repeats that indefinitely. Okay, so we've written our first automation and we've uploaded it to the CSB1. We've connected to it with an Android phone running Engine Driver. Now I'm going to add one more automation. Because I do a lot of testing in the evenings and my grandkids are living here at the moment, I have to make things silent. So I'm going to add to the bottom of this automation another sequence. Now this dotted line is just a divider between the two sequences, and as I said before, automations and sequences need to have individual numbers, so that's what we've done here. This next automation is 3, so we went 1 for the first automation, 2 for the first sequence. Now we're going 3 and 4 for the last sequence. And no matter how many sequences you have to have them unique. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in future videos. So also we've got a change in the title that stipulates that there is no sound. And all we've done is remove the loco startup and the horn turning on and off and the bell turning on and off. So that's it, your first 2 automations. So what's left to do now? We need to compile and upload and then run the automation to test it to make sure it's working okay. As always, once I've done the upload, I'll back up the config files, select the folder, and then back them up and overwrite. And that's it, done. Close that out and we can go back to the code, so when we're testing we can look at it if there's something wrong and make a decision on changing it. Well, modelers, we've written our first piece of code to run a train backwards and forwards, shuttling between 2 points, but it does have some limitations. The first one is that it's not particularly accurate. We're timing the run. So if the track is a bit dirty and the train is a bit jerky along the line, it's going to go a different distance each time it runs forward or backwards. So a timed system is not a great idea. What you really want is some form of control over where the train is, so you can use, say, like block detection or a infrared sensor to park the train and then head it back in the opposite direction. So now the second issue is, once you start the automation, there's no stopping it. The loco will continue to run backwards and forwards. You can turn the track power off and it'll stop it at that stage. But the system still remembers the sequence, and when you turn the power back on, it'll start up again. So that's not a particularly good situation. Unfortunately, the code that you need to add to be able to stop it is not in the current production version. It's in a development version that's a couple of steps on from where it is at the moment. I'll show you that in the next video. If you're a modeler and you build a few kits, use the following and some instructions. Now, no doubt those instructions are fairly concise and they're in English, but programming is much the same. All you need to learn is what the different functions do. So you write a series of functions in order of what you want to happen, and that's it. It's as simple as that. If you go back and look at the code on this video, it's just a set of instructions. Not hard to follow. So I hope that this has given you a taste. And please, if you've got questions or comments or whatever, certainly just add a note and I'll try and answer it as quickly as I can. So in the next video, we're going to first of all look at how I've wired up the test track and the components that's on it at the moment, and then, time permitting, we'll look at block detection and infrared sensors and the coding around those to more accurately park the train and then reverse it so that it's following the sequence in a more realistic mode. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. I hope my voice and stopping and starting in speech is not too painful to sit through. But that's the way I am now. Can't be helped. So if you do like what you're learning, please subscribe and ring the bell for getting notifications, and let your friends know about the channel. I'd like to try and grow it quite quickly. By the way, the code for this video will be in a post on YouTube. And you can copy and paste it into your copy of EX installer. Have a great day and happy modelling. I'm Chris. See you next time.